warn we're already in the midst of a new epidemic called Gulf War disease. I'm Charles Rowe.
And I'm Nadine Woodward. At Veterans Administration hospitals around the country, doctors have been trying for years to figure out what is making so many Gulf War veterans so sick. Well, now some of those doctors believe it is a disease, a contagious disease.
Some medical experts even fear it may be a product of germ warfare. So how serious is this disease? As KREM 2's Tom Grant reports, consider what it's done to the veterans.
David Smith was a big man in the Persian Gulf, a 250-pound Marine Corps powerlifting champion.
I hold the Marine Corps record for my weight class.
But somewhere in the Gulf, somewhere on the way to Kuwait City, he got sick. At first, it just seemed like the flu, but the diarrhea never went away. When he returned to Lewiston, the sickness followed him. Now he had chronic fatigue, difficulty speaking, and forgetfulness.
We fought this for a while.
16 months.
Until finally I found him collapsed. He'd been unable to control his bowels.
Then his wife started coming down with the same symptoms, diarrhea, even chest pains.
I don't like to talk about that.
She broke out the first time we saw her.
Not until this fall, at a gathering of several Gulf veterans here in Spokane, did David Smith realize just how many other veterans had the same problem. Tony Wilner, a Navy communications specialist, remembers getting sick aboard the ship during the Gulf War.
I got extremely sick on December 15th approximately, with nausea and diarrhea. It's the worst I've ever had in my life.
5 years later, it's so bad that many days he's bedridden.
I'm going through pure hell. I'm having all these health problems and chronic pain and chronic fatigue and the stuff screwing me up.
That's the track, France, right?
Jeffrey Hutchinson was an Army Ranger who spent most of Desert Storm behind enemy lines. He watched as the engineers destroyed the biggest depot of Iraqi armaments that he'd ever seen. 25 hangar-sized bunkers, each big enough to hold a B-52.
These two buildings that I looked in were filled to the ceiling with artillery rounds, mortar rounds, rockets.
When the bunker went up, smoke rings floated 3 miles into the air.
We came across the border back into Saudi Arabia. A lot of guys had diarrhea. Some guys were throwing up.
Over the next 5 years, Hutchinson would develop chronic fatigue, memory loss, night sweats. Then early this year, Jeffrey Hutchinson suddenly dropped 60 pounds in a 4-month bout of nausea.
Throwing up blood when I have diarrhea.
The veterans had all been told by doctors that it was probably all in their head.
I had a VA doctor come right up to me in my face and say, "Why are you here? Why are you faking all this?"
Yet their wives and children were showing up with similar symptoms, like memory loss and strange rashes.
My arm, I got all sorts of bumps. See? All around my arm. Once my dad came back from Saudi, they stayed.
Indeed, many found that their most intimate contacts had been changed forever.
Physically, when you had sex, you get a burning sensation?
Oh, you bet.
Severe burning.
Burn a rash
like
in
battery
there.
acid. His semen burns when it touches my skin. It's like an acid is being dropped on me.
They began getting disturbing advice from doctors.
We do not practice unprotected sex any longer. And this came on the recommendation of not just one doctor, but several doctors.
So we have been advised by doctors never to make love again without condoms. We have been advised never to have children, which is very difficult.
They came up with, I'm 5% fertile, but all my sperm has been genetically altered, and it is
5% living was genetically altered and deformed. And would not be able to produce a child.
Why would so many of America's strongest and healthiest young people be struck down? In a minute, we'll take a look at disturbing evidence. It could be germ warfare.
If you're over 65, your satisfaction is part of QualMed's Senior Security Plan. It's a zero premium plan, so you don't pay any premium ever. Choose your own physician from our huge network. Get built-in preventive care and wellness programs, snowbird coverage, paid-in-full hospital coverage, and more, all with a 98% member satisfaction rate. Call QualMed now about senior security and get the satisfaction you deserve from your health plan.
She's gentle, thoughtful, and accommodating. Cooper George Retirement Community, Spokane's landmark for retirement living.
Everyone knows that the real pros are the people at Spokane Farm. see severe weather, a major traffic delay, or breaking news, call the KREM 2 newsroom at 838-NEWS. Or for a free call on your AirTouch cellular phone, call #1 News. Brought to you by AirTouch Cellular.
Hey kids, KREM 2 and Fred Meyer want you to win tickets to see an ice extravaganza you'll remember forever. The Wizard of Oz on Ice. Just stop by your local Fred Meyer store and pick up your coloring contest entry form. Color it in and enter it for a chance to win tickets to The Wizard of Oz on Ice. Tickets are on sale at the box office and selected seat outlets, or call 509-325-SEAT to charge by phone. Enter today and see The Wizard of Oz on Ice, playing Spokane Arena December 25th through 29th. There's no place like Oz on Ice.
Watch Oprah weekdays at 4 on KREM 2.
Look at all these toys. Kmart's Toy Mania. Look, Teacher Barbie.
And Ocean Friend Barbie.
What's 3 plus 1?
Like, I don't know.
It's Darth Vader from Star Wars. Come to the dark side, Barbie.
You're giving me a headache.
But wait, for what? Batman and his Lego flying time vessel and Great Satan's head.
Where have you been?
What are you doing for New Year's Eve?
My goggles are fogging up. Help me.
Cool. Kmart's taking 20% off all Hot Wheels, all Cabbage Patch dolls. Where else but Kmart?
I've always loved you. In fact, I've had a crush on you since the early 70s.
This is a fact about Gulf War disease sent by one medical doctor to another. It begins, this is not a joke. Many of our military's families have come down with the infectious portion of this disease. And as KREM 2's Tom Grant reports now, it is certainly no joke.
After thousands of American veterans came back from the Persian Gulf with inexplicable health complaints, speculation began about the potential cause of their illnesses. Among other things, they've considered fumes from burning oil wells. They've considered nerve gas released when Iraqi bunkers were destroyed.
Yet the health consequences...
But the President's Committee on Gulf War Illness is still pushing stress as the cause. The Center for Disease Control has found that Gulf War veterans are 3 times more likely to be sick than the general public, but it offers only the most vague diagnosis.
The symptoms clearly fell into a very clear clustering that resembled almost entirely chronic fatigue syndrome.
No doubt stress or chemical exposures could be at the root of the illnesses of many veterans, but experts find those explanations lacking when it comes to explaining why so many people have become sick who never went near the Gulf. According to a survey by a U.S. Senate committee, 77% of spouses and up to 65% of the children of Gulf War illness patients have developed the same or similar symptoms.
I don't have any chemical that would injure any single human being that he could bring home with him and pass on to his wife.
Dr. Edward Hyman is now a physician in New Orleans, but he was trained as a chemist before going to medical school. And when he heard all the talk about a nerve gas as the potential cause of Gulf War illness, he began researching the theories of chemical illness transmission. One theory is that the veterans brought the contamination back with them on their clothes, in letters, or in souvenirs.
We tried cleaning the dirt and stuff out of it. Won't work.
Indeed, veterans did bring back sand and grit in everything. And it smells funny.
See if you can smell it. I mean, it's really weird. I don't know.
There is a smell to it.
And just everything smells like that.
By looking into the sarin nerve gas attack in a Tokyo subway, Hyman tried to check that theory. He collaborated with a European scientist.
He went over there and sent me data, and I told him it did not fit the pattern of the disease desert storm.
They have not gotten the right care.
In Los Angeles, Dr. William Baumschweiger has been examining the other prevalent theory, stress. As a Veterans Administration physician with expertise in both psychology and neurology, Dr. Baumschweiger is quite skeptical of the talk about post-traumatic stress syndrome.
Are you going to say they suddenly caught a personality disorder and they're malingering or gold-bricking? I don't think so.
Jeffrey Hutchinson flew to Los Angeles to be examined by Dr. Baumschweiger, just as David Smith and Tony Wilner did before him. They were all diagnosed by Baumschweiger not with stress, but with physical symptoms of brain damage.
They all have, if they have real Gulf War disorder, blurry vision, which when you look at it is double vision. That means they have cranial nerve problems.
Dr. Baumschweiger is one of the few doctors in the Veterans Administration who will actually give a diagnosis of Gulf War illness, and he's put it in writing. It's terminal.
Most of these people are really sick, and it's not that hard to treat, and it's not that hard to diagnose if you're motivated and if you can take the heat from all the people who tell you that you're seeing things and you're hearing things and you're imagining things.
Baumschweiger believes the veterans have suffered serious damage to their immune systems. As this letter from David Smith's doctor shows, they are getting infections like those seen in AIDS patients. Baumschweiger believes low-level chemical exposure may have triggered it.
It is probably more like a family of related disorders precipitated by exposure to low-level sarin.
Yet Baumschweiger says there appears to be a strange virus involved, for scientists are now finding unique viral fragments in the blood of veterans.
This fragment is not found in the regular population.
Because of these viral findings, even those who subscribe to the chemical theory of Gulf War illness, such as Dr. Robert Gary of the Tulane University Medical School, say, and I quote, "If a virus is found to be associated with this disease, significant resources need to be dedicated to learn whether these microbes are contributing to the illnesses of returning veterans and their families, as well as to birth defects in their children after the war."
They should have been asking themselves, what if, a long time ago.
When Gulf War disease, the hidden enemy continues, we'll introduce you to a doctor who has been asking questions about Gulf War syndrome for 4 years now and just couldn't ignore the symptoms.
The first job is to help the poor souls that are suffering.
We love to warm our toes beside a roaring fire.
Here's a gift to warm his heart. A Rolex Submariner with an oyster bracelet from Ben Bridge.
We hold hands and stroll under the stars.
Give her a classic from Ben Bridge. A Rolex with a diamond set and rose-colored dial. Wrapped in a Benny Bear.
Your personal jeweler, Ben Bridge.
I was just sitting here thinking how much...
Whoops, I got the click.
Take the click. It could be a job.
It's not a job, Ma.
How do you know?
How do I know?
You don't know. Take the click.
Introducing new call waiting ID from US West. When you're on the phone, call waiting ID shows you who's calling, so you always know how to handle the call.
Ooh, got the click.
Take the click.
Ma, it's not a job. It's Jane.
Does Jane have a job?
New call waiting ID. Another simple answer from US West.
Drive one because it's one of the safest cars on the road today. 2,000 cash back. Drive one because it's loaded with the features you want. 2,000 cash back. Drive Ford Taurus during the leadership sales drive. And drive away with 2,000 cash back. Drive the car that beats the competition in power, passenger room, and value. Get to the leadership sales drive. Only at your Northwest Ford dealer. Home of 5 of the 10 best sellers in America again. And drive home a new Ford Taurus with 2,000 cash back.
She's elegant, graceful, and has excellent taste. Cooper George Retirement Community, Spokane's landmark for retirement living.
If your customer's clothing gets wrinkled, 800-776-SUIT will connect them to the nearest Men's Warehouse and we'll press it for free. I guarantee it.
The Men's Warehouse on Division Street across from Northtown Mall.
Have some fun with Seinfeld, weeknights at 7 on KREM 2. This engine is like no other engine in the world. It offers exceptional quality, performance, and dependability. It also carries exclusive Ram Gold Line Forever warranty, good for as long as you own your vehicle. Your engine will be remanufactured by the experts at Ram Engine, the innovative leaders for over 22 years. Put the zip back in your Z, the fire back in your Ford, and the thunder back in your Bird. Call the experts at Ram Engine and ask for your forever warranty. Ram Engine, Ram hot and proud of it.
When soldiers returned from the Gulf War with a long list of symptoms, one New Orleans doctor took notice. In fact, these symptoms, aching joints, chronic fatigue, memory loss, night sweats, headaches, skin rashes, diarrhea, and depression, sounded like something he'd seen before, chronic fatigue syndrome.
It's probably the same causation.
Using a microscopic analysis technique that he developed, Dr. Edward Hyman began looking for certain bacteria in the urine of Gulf War veterans, bacteria that other doctors ignored. He found them. Then he hospitalized his patients at the Thoreau Clinic and he treated them intravenously with high doses of antibiotics.
And 2 adolescent children, it's 22 total. In the short run, every one got better.
A few have relapsed, but most of Hyman's patients had dramatic recoveries. Men once bedridden went back to work. A pilot who'd been grounded was allowed to fly again.
I didn't put him back on flight status. I don't know how to make that determination.
Hyman theorizes that soldiers in the Gulf picked up a bacteria, probably one endemic to the region, but one that was fairly isolated until 750,000 Americans dropped in. But he also considers the possibility that American soldiers may have been exposed to biological weapons.
If I were the madman of Baghdad and wanted to wipe out an army 10 times my size, I wouldn't do it with guns and such. Biologicals would do it a hell of a lot better.
Based on his experience with bacterial contagions, he thinks the disease is slowly spreading from soldiers to civilians.
The sick person's coughs or sneezes, and those droplets of water from the sneeze float through the air and somebody else inhales it and they get it.
Hyman is not alone in his ideas. In Pennsylvania, Dr. Catherine Leisure has also been working with sick Gulf War veterans.
I think it's an unknown infectious agent which is causing this syndrome or this illness in multiple different parts of the body of the Persian Gulf veteran.
In Irvine, California, doctors Garth and Nancy Nicholson think they have found that infectious agent. Garth Nicholson is the former chairman of the Department of Tumor Biology at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Research Center. He has published more than 400 scientific papers, including 9 on Gulf War illness.
When our stepdaughter came back from her service in Operation Desert Storm, she slowly came down with an illness that we now know as Gulf War illness. And we found out that many of her colleagues in the 101st Airborne had similar illnesses, and nobody was doing anything about it.
The Nicholsons had also noticed a striking similarity between the complaints of chronic fatigue syndrome and Gulf War illness, and they also had ideas about a suspicious microorganism.
The type of illness has been described in the medical literature.
The bug they suspected is known as Mycoplasma incognitus, which is like a very tiny bacteria without a cell wall.
What the Nicholsons have done is compare blood samples from healthy civilians with samples from sick Gulf War veterans. What they found was none of the healthy civilians had mycoplasmal infections, but half of the sick Gulf War veterans did.
We know it's a chronic infection, first because the signs and symptoms are chronic, but also what causes the illness is a microorganism that's a contagion, an airborne contagion, and this would explain why the families slowly come down with the illness.
This mycoplasma is quite dangerous.
It can kill you, and there are medical publications on this.
Upon further analysis, they found something highly unusual in this Gulf War mycoplasma, a gene from the AIDS virus spliced into the mycoplasma's genetic structure.
It has very unusual genes associated with it that normally should not be there. Therefore, we think that it might be a biological weapon that was released during Operation Desert Storm.
Genes from the AIDS virus spliced into a mycoplasma. Germ warfare. That kind of talk has made the Nicholsons' work extremely controversial. Yet there is ample evidence that Saddam Hussein and the Iraqis were experimenting with biological weapons. The U.S. captured many weapons like these capable of delivering biological warheads. A Senate report from 1994 lists 9 pages of pathogens shipped from the U.S. to Iraq, pathogens suitable for use as biological weapons.
You know, that's a good indication that
veterans have documents indicating that such weapons were captured by U.S. forces.
And I also have the NBC logs that shows that they captured chemical and biological agents.
The Nicholsons believe that if American troops were exposed to Iraqi chemicals, they probably got a dose of germs, too.
To say that it's only the chemical that then immunosuppresses is naive.
Or, the Nicholsons say, soldiers may have been infected by U.S. action.
Soldiers may have received contaminated vaccines, particularly anthrax vaccines.
The military has denied assertions about contaminated vaccines and germ warfare, but veterans are skeptical, primarily because they have caught the government in the past being less than fully truthful. For instance, this document from 1995 says Mycoplasma incognitus is not known to cause disease in man. But Dr. Larry Goss of Walters, Oklahoma, says the government must not be reading its own literature. He has a copy of a workbook used to train military doctors in 1993, a workbook which discusses Mycoplasma fermentans, also known as Mycoplasma incognitus.
The most serious presentation of Mycoplasma fermentans infection is that of a fulminant. That means deadly, rapid, systemic disease that begins as a flu-like illness.
The principal spokesman for the VA seems to know nothing of this.
I don't know about that workbook.
The Pentagon refused all our requests for interviews on this subject and refused to answer our written questions. But Dr. Goss's personal experience tells him that the Nicholsons have got some part of it right.
At the time of Desert Storm, Desert Shield, I was working in the Army hospital out at Fort Sill.
Shortly thereafter, both he and his wife came down with mysterious illnesses. After other treatments failed, he heard what the Nicholsons were suggesting.
I elected to treat my wife empirically with the recommended treatment at the time that it appeared it was effective was doxycycline. And within a week, she got better.
Within a week?
Within a week, yes. And I treated myself with it, too, and I got better.
Since then, Goss has treated a number of veterans, including Danny Wolf, using a protocol developed by the Nicholsons. Patients are put on repeated 6-week cycles of doxycycline.
Most patients are home free, about 90% of them, after 6 cycles.
It's a relatively inexpensive treatment, but the VA recommends against it.
I've heard from an equally large number of veterans that they tried the doxycycline therapy that had been recommended in letters sent out by Dr. Nicholson, and they've not been helped.
That is particularly troublesome to Goss, because he believes this disease is spreading into the general population.
It is contagious. We do know that it is in the perspiration. It's been found in the saliva, certainly in sexual secretions, semen and vaginal secretions. So it can be transmitted sexually. It just stands to reason, since it's in the nuclei of the white cells, that blood transfusions can be a problem.
It is very scary.
The Nicholsons are fearful that because military personnel so often take part in blood drives, that the nation's blood supply is already tainted.
Unfortunately, many of these soldiers have Gulf War illness, and we've detected this microorganism in their blood. This means the blood supply of the United States is contaminated with this chronic infectious agent.
Blood banks say they do screen out people with chronic diseases.
There are specific questions we ask about chronic illness, chronic symptoms that would defer donors from donating.
But because veterans have been told for years that the disease was in their head, not in their blood, doctors believe sick veterans have been donating anyway. Doctors and veterans say the question of the contagious nature of Gulf War illness needs thorough examination now, before it's too late.
I think this Gulf War syndrome is a warning shot. It's a shot across our bow, the bow of our ship of civilization, that we better wake up.
What we've done is that we've opened a Pandora's box here, and we've played dice with God's genes, and it's loose.
Yet what the veterans have seen from their government is a pattern of denial, even of retribution. Consider the cases of Dr. William Baumschweiger and Dr. Kathy Leisure. They made presentations to a national conference on environmental medicine just last October, but they made some controversial statements.
Soon Leisure was being fired, and Baumschweiger had his entire department shut down. Now, the VA denies that.
So I would be very surprised if either of those allegations by either Dr. Leisure or Dr. Baumschweiger have any merit at all.
However, veterans are skeptical of a VA that funds research into theories that burning semen is an allergy.
There's a theory that an allergy to human seminal plasma can develop that can cause this burning sensation and even swelling or reddening of the sexual tissues. And we're looking into that further.
And veterans are skeptical of a VA that discredits and refuses to fund scientists like the Nicholsons, like Baumschweiger, like Leisure and Hyman, who have helped them. That's a stark contrast to what sick veterans say about the VA and the Department of Defense.
they're not acknowledging the situation at all. I mean, every veteran we talk to, they are being turned away from the VA.
Ostracized.
They're telling them it's all in their head, and at the same time, they're telling us these
And
things.
they won't help.
But on the other hand, they're telling us we shouldn't have children. You can't have it both ways. I mean, it's either there or it's not.
Nearly 6 years after the Gulf War, Tony Wilner can no longer hold a job, and his wife is often too tired to attend school.
I ended up having to drop out of school last winter quarter, and it was towards the end of the quarter. I just kept getting sicker and sicker. So
Jeffrey Hutchinson is virtually penniless, jobless, and his wife has memory lapses that affect her job, too.
I make sandwiches for a living, and I can't even remember how to make sandwiches sometimes.
David Smith and his wife have declared bankruptcy.
It has affected every avenue of our life, every single day of our life.
Torpedoman Joe Passarelli looks at the recurring rash on his 3-year-old daughter, a rash identical to the one that he has suffered ever since the Gulf War, and has only one question.
All I want them to do is to tell me how to stop it. That's all I want from them, is to tell me how to stop it. But don't sit there and tell me it doesn't exist.
A number of veterans have filed a lawsuit against 88 companies which sold Saddam Hussein materials for biological and chemical weapons.
And another group of veterans recently took out a full-page ad in the Washington Times calling for a full investigation of the biological aspects of Gulf War disease.